The engine coughed once, then went silent. For a second, Alina thought it would start again. She turned the key, listening, hoping. Nothing. Only the wind brushing past the car and the faint ticking sound fading under the hood. The road stretched, empty in both directions, dark and unfamiliar. Like a place forgotten on purpose. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel and let out a slow breath. This trip was supposed to clear her head. That was what she had told herself when she packed a small bag and left before sunrise. No arguments, no explanations, just distance. But distance had a way of revealing things instead of hiding them. Alina stepped out of the car. The night air was cold and sharp, biting through her coat. A single streetlight flickered a few meters away, casting long shadows on the cracked road. She checked her phone, 1 week bar. No service for calls. She laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it felt like the final proof that she was alone in more ways than one. She was 32 years old. Married and tired in a way sleep never fixed. Her husband, Mark, had not noticed she left early. He rarely noticed small things anymore. Their life had turned quiet, not peaceful quiet, but the kind filled with unsaid words. Mornings passed with polite talk. Nights ended with their backs turned. Love had not disappeared. It had simply stopped reaching for her. Alina walked around the car, opened the hood, and stared at the engine as if it might explain itself. She knew nothing about cars. She knew plenty about pretending things were fine. The sound of tires approaching made her freeze. Headlights cut through the dark and slowed as they came closer. For a moment, fear rose in her chest. She stood still, hands clenched, heart beating fast. The truck stopped behind her car. The engine turned off. A door opened. A man stepped out, moving calmly, not too close. "Evening," he said. His voice was steady, warm. "Car trouble?" Alina nodded. It just stopped. "I'm Daniel," he said, keeping his distance. "I work nearby. Mind if I take a look?" She studied him quickly. He looked ordinary in the best way. No sharp edges, no rush. Just someone who seemed used to fixing broken things. "'Kay," she said. Daniel leaned over the engine, checked a few things, then straightened up. "Battery's gone," he said. "Looks like it gave up all at once." Lena felt a strange wave of relief. At least it wasn't her fault. "Is it bad?" she asked. "Not dangerous, just not starting tonight." He paused. "There's a small workshop about 10 minutes from here. I can tow it, or I can call roadside help for you if you'd rather wait." She looked down the road again. Empty. Quiet, waiting felt worse than moving. "Tow it," she said. The drive to the workshop was short but silent. Alina watched the road from Daniel's truck, her thoughts moving faster than the wheels. She wondered how her life had narrowed to moments like this, standing still, hoping someone else would decide for her. The workshop sat behind an old building, lights on, door half open. Inside, it was warm. Tools lined the walls. Small radio played low, soft music, filling the space without demanding attention. "You can sit," Ganel said, pulling a chair toward a small table. "I'll make sure the car's safe for the night." Alina sat, rubbing her hands together. The warmth reached her slowly. She watched Daniel work, his movements, sure, practiced. There was comfort in watching someone who knew what they were. "Doing you driving far?" he asked, not looking up. "Not really," she said. "Just away." Daniel nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. They talked in short pieces at first. Where she was from. How long he had worked there. Simple words, simple questions. Yet something about the space felt different. Unrushed, open. Alina found herself speaking more than she planned. She mentioned her job, her commute, how days blurred together. Daniel listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes just letting her words land without fixing them. When he finished checking the car, he wiped his hands and leaned against the table. "It'll need a new battery," he said. "I can get one in the morning." She looked at the clock on the wall. It was late. It's too late to call anyone without explanations. She didn't have the energy to give. "There's a small guest room. Upstairs, Daniel added carefully, if you want to rest, no pressure. Alina hesitated, her chest felt tight. Nothing about the offer felt wrong. That was what scared her. Thank you, she said. Just for tonight. Upstairs, the room was simple, clean, quiet. Alina sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, listening to the sounds below. The radio, a door closing. Footsteps fading. She lay back and stared at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the evening, the breakdown, the help, the calm voice that asked nothing from her. She thought of Mark, of how long it had been since someone had listened without checking the time. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. This was past tears. This was something else, a soft ache. A reminder downstairs. Daniel turned off the lights and locked the door. He paused, looking up the stairs, then shook his head slightly, as if reminding himself of something important. The night settled. Alina closed her eyes, knowing that nothing had happened and everything already had. Alina woke to a soft glow spilling through the window. The morning felt strange, quiet, and safe all at once. The room was empty, the faint smell of coffee drifting from downstairs. She stretched slowly, remembering last night the breakdown, the truck, Daniel's calm voice. Her heart still carried a flutter she didn't expect. It wasn't attraction, exactly, it was recognition. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. And the memory made her chest ache with something she didn't have words for. By the time she descended the stairs, Daniel was already in the workshop, moving around with quiet precision. He looked up, smiled gently, and offered her a cup of steaming coffee. "Good morning," he said simply. His voice had the same calm warmth as yesterday. "Sleep well?" "Yes," she said. Her voice sounded smaller than she intended, carrying both gratitude and hesitation. She took the cup, holding it like a lifeline. The warmth seeped into her hands, through her fingers, and settled in her chest. Daniel nodded and returned to the car, opening the hood to check once more. Alina wandered slowly around the workshop, taking in the small details. Worn tools, the faint smell of oil mixed with the lingering notes of music. The way sunlight spilled across the concrete floor. Everything felt real, tangible, alive, and for the first time in a long while. She felt she belonged somewhere, even if just for a moment. They began talking casually. First about nothing important. He asked her where she was headed. She told him vaguely, skirting the truth of her escape. But as the minutes passed, the conversation deepened without effort. She told him about her marriage, about the quiet loneliness that had settled like dust over her life. She told him about the days that felt endless, where even laughter seemed borrowed. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He listened, carefully, like he was taking notes without writing anything down. His silence was not empty. It was deliberate, thoughtful, the kind that makes people feel their words matter. Finally, he said, "I know what it's like to feel invisible. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet one. Day after day, you wake up and the world forgets you exist." Alina blinked. His words hit too close to home. She wanted to nod, to agree, but her throat felt tight. She swallowed and took a small sip of coffee. He glanced at her, then back at the car, letting the silence settle between them like a gentle wave. Hours passed unnoticed. They moved between conversation and quiet. Daniel worked on the car, making small adjustments, checking parts, humming under his breath. Alina watched, him fascinated not by the work itself, but by the way he seemed entirely in control, steady, patient. She felt her own tension, the ache of months of loneliness start to loosen. "Just a little. You remind me," he said suddenly, breaking the quiet, "of someone I used to know. Someone I loved, but I lost her because I waited too long to say what I felt." His words were soft, unforced. Sometimes life doesn't give you second chances, but it teaches you to notice the people around you before it's too late. Alina looked at him, curious, unsure. There was a quiet honesty in his eyes. It was not flirtation, not anything that could be misread easily. It was simply recognition of human vulnerability. The acknowledgement that people mattered more than routines, more than safe habits. She wanted to say something, but the words stuck. Instead, she watched him work, noticing the way he paused to think. The way his hands moved with care, the way he avoided unnecessary noise. She realized she hadn't felt this calm, this alive, in years. Eventually, the car was ready to start, its engine humming steadily under Daniel's careful inspection. Alina felt a rush of relief, but also a pang of hesitation. She didn't want to leave, not yet. There was a strange pull she couldn't name, a feeling of being understood without judgment. Daniel noticed her hesitation. "You shouldn't drive. Tired," he said gently. "If you want, you can stay until later. Rest, then head back. There's no rush." Alina looked at him, unsure how to respond. She could feel the weight of her life pressing from all sides, her responsibilities, her marriage, the endless routines. But here, in this small workshop with a stranger who had given her nothing but care and attention, she felt freedom. She shook her head, forcing a smile. "No, I should go," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Daniel nodded, accepting her words but not letting her rush. "Sometimes," he said softly, "life gives you moments you don't expect. You can choose to notice them or you can ignore them. The choice is yours." The simplicity of his words stayed with her as she prepared to leave. Every movement felt deliberate, meaningful. She slid into the car, started the engine, and felt its smooth purr under her hands. The sound, ordinary as it was, carried a reassurance she hadn't felt in years. Before she left, she looked at Daniel one last time. He was standing by the workshop, leaning casually but alert. He gave her a small, knowing smile. Alina nodded, unsure what that gesture meant, but feeling the warmth of it linger. Driving away, the road felt different. The dark stretches no longer felt threatening. Each mile seemed lighter. She replayed their conversations in her mind, the weight of loneliness lifting slightly with each thought. Alina thought of Mark, of the quiet nights they shared, of the distance that had grown between them. She realized she had been asleep, not in body, but in heart. This encounter with Daniel, this unexpected kindness, had reminded her of something vital. She was alive, capable of feeling deeply, capable of longing and hope. The thought made her chest ache, not with desire, not yet, but with possibility, with the knowledge that life could still surprise her. That connection existed somewhere beyond the routines, beyond the walls she had built around herself, and she knew, even as she returned to the familiar streets, that nothing would feel quite the same again. Something inside her had shifted, awakened by a moment of attention, by a stranger who had offered help without expecting anything in return. Daniel had not done anything extraordinary. He had not offered more than a place to rest, a cup of coffee. His careful presence, yet in that simplicity, he had stirred a longing that had been dormant for years. The longing to be truly seen, to be understood, to be valued not for appearances, not for convenience, but for being exactly who she was. The drive continued, and Elena's mind raced with thoughts of what she wanted from life, from love, from herself. She realized she could not return to the same silence, the same half-life she had tolerated. That day, that encounter, had changed something fundamental. Her awareness, was dangerous, thrilling, terrifying, all at once. By the time she arrived home, the streets familiar and quiet, Alina understood the paradox she now faced. She was grateful for the brief connection, but it also made her world heavier, filled with questions she had no answers to. Mark greeted her as usual, tired and distracted. She smiled politely, gave minimal explanations, and retreated to her room. Lying in bed, she could feel the echo of Daniel's words. Life gives you moments you don't expect. You can choose to notice them, or you can ignore them. She realized she could no longer ignore them. The morning had started like any other, but it had ended with a feeling she could not name, and a reminder that she had been asleep too long. A stranger had simply reminded her she was alive, and the awakening fragile and raw, had just begun. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, painting Elena's room with warmth. She lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, remembering the previous night and the quiet moments that had shifted something inside her. She felt restless, alive, and afraid all at once. The encounter with Daniel wasn't just a memory anymore, it was a spark. Subtle but undeniable, and it lingered in her chest like a quiet rhythm she couldn't ignore. Eventually, she rose and dressed quickly. Today, she told herself, she would face the day. She went downstairs. Daniel was already moving around the workshop, checking tools and looking over the car one last time. When he saw her, he smiled, not a teasing or flirtatious smile, but a gentle one, steady, grounded. "Morning," he said. "Sleep well?" "Yes," Elena replied. Her voice carried a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She had not slept. Well, not in the usual sense, but her mind was awake in ways it hadn't been for years. She took the cup of coffee he handed her. Savoring the warmth as it spread through her hands and into her body, Daniel checked the car thoroughly. One more time. Elena watched him, noticing the careful attention he paid to every detail. The patience in his movements, and the quiet confidence in the way he handled the tools. She realized she had been holding her breath in more ways than she could count. And watching someone so grounded and precise made her feel something she hadn't in years. Calm. A calm that carried the weight of care, attention, and genuine concern. When he finished, he turned to her. "It's ready. You can go now. Everything is fine." His voice was soft, reassuring. But remember, life gives us moments like these. Moments where we can see clearly if we're willing to pay attention. Elena nodded, feeling a pang in her chest. She wanted to linger, to extend the quiet connection, but reality pulled at her. The streets, the distance, her home, it all waited. She knew she had to return to her world, the one she had tried to escape. Yet she also knew she had changed. Something within her had shifted irreversibly. She slid into her car, turning the key. The engine purred smoothly. She felt the thrill of control, the reassurance of motion, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on Daniel. On the brief encounter, on the way someone could remind her she was alive simply by being present. She glanced back at the workshop. Daniel was standing there, tall, calm, almost part of the morning itself. He gave her a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shared moments. Driving away, Elena felt a strange mixture of relief and longing. The road stretched out ahead of her, familiar yet different. Like a path she had walked countless times, but now with new eyes. Every turn, every shadow, every patch of sunlight on the pavement felt heightened, alive with possibility. She couldn't stop thinking about what Daniel had said, the reminder that some people appear in our lives simply to show us what is missing, to awaken us to possibilities we had forgotten. Her thoughts wandered to Mark, her husband, her partner, of 8 years, who had been kind and dependable, but distant in ways that had made her feel invisible. She thought about the quietness of their home, the absence of attention and acknowledgement, the space where intimacy had faded into habit. And she realized that the encounter with Daniel hadn't created desire, not in the ordinary sense. It had created awareness. Awareness that her life could be more, that she could be more, that she deserved more. The streets became familiar as she approached home, but her perception had changed. Every detail seemed sharper: the curve of the road, the pattern of light through the trees, even the distant hum of traffic. She parked the car and walked inside, her heart still racing, her mind buzzing with questions and possibilities. Mark was in the kitchen reading the newspaper. He glanced at her briefly and asked where she had been. She gave him a polite, measured answer, careful not to reveal the emotional storm that had taken place in the last 24 hours. She walked to her room, closed the door, and sank onto the bed. She thought of Daniel's calm presence, his listening without judgment, his subtle kindness, the way he had allowed her to feel again. It was a dangerous awareness, thrilling and terrifying, and she knew she couldn't unfeel it. it had awakened. Something dormant inside her, a longing for attention, for care, for recognition, not from someone random, but from someone who truly sees her. Days passed, and the encounter replayed in her mind, quietly, insistently. She noticed herself paying more attention to her surroundings, to herself, to the people around her. She spoke more clearly, asked more directly for what she wanted, even in small matters. Mark noticed the change. He commented once, casually, on her newfound energy, unaware of its source. Alina smiled politely, choosing silence. Some things were hers alone to process. Each day she felt the echo of Daniel's words. Life gives moments you don't expect. You can notice them or you can ignore them, and she realized she could not ignore them. She had felt the spark of being seen, and once recognized, the heart does not easily forget. She understood that the encounter had not only reminded her of her desires, but had also forced her to confront the reality of her marriage. The distance that had grown over time, Alina started to reflect on what she truly wanted. She asked herself questions she had avoided for years. Was she content with routine comfort, or did she crave genuine connection? Was she willing to accept a life of habit, or was she ready to pursue attention and care in the relationships that mattered? These questions were not simple, and the answers were not immediately clear. But they mattered more than anything else she had confronted in years. She found herself thinking about Daniel. Not with longing in a romantic sense, but with gratitude. He had not altered her life dramatically. He had not made decisions for her. He had simply reminded her of what was possible, the emotional attention she deserved, the awareness that life could be deeper, richer, more meaningful. And that reminder was powerful enough to change the course of her thinking. Weeks passed. Alina began to act differently in subtle ways. She asked more of her husband, demanded small attentions she had previously withheld and refused to ignore. Her own needs. Some responses were positive, some were not. She realized that change required courage, and courage required acknowledgement of one's own worth. She had gained that acknowledgement, a gift she would not allow to be wasted. And yet, Daniel remained in her thoughts, a quiet presence in the background of her mind. She wondered if he knew the impact of his small acts, the kindness, the attentiveness, the way he had allowed her to feel alive again. She realized that the moment on that quiet road had become a turning point, a catalyst for self-awareness and action that she could not replicate, only carry forward. One evening, Alina drove past the road where her car had broken down. The workshop came into view, small and unassuming. She slowed down but did not stop. There was no need to. The encounter had already done its work. She felt gratitude, closure, and a sense of possibility that belonged entirely to her. She understood that some people enter our lives not to remain, but to awaken something we had forgotten. Her relationship with Mark changed as well. Not immediately or dramatically, but gradually. She no longer accepted silence and distance as normal. She spoke, she acted, she demanded attention, she asserted her presence, and even in moments of resistance or conflict. She carried the awareness Daniel had given her, the knowledge that life could be richer, that love and care required attention, and that she was worthy of both. Alina realized that the encounter with Daniel had not created desire for him personally. It had created desire for life itself, for meaningful connection, for recognition of her own value. And that desire was dangerous and exhilarating, fragile yet insistent. It was a reminder that the heart could awaken at any moment, that change could begin with a single choice, a single act of kindness. She continued her routine, but everything felt subtly different. Her conversations were livelier, her emotions more engaged, her perception sharper. She noticed small details, small gestures from others, and appreciated them with a depth she had long forgotten. The memory of Daniel's quiet attentiveness and his words about noticing life's moments became a touchstone she returned to in her thoughts whenever she felt numbness creeping back. Months later, Alina reflected on the incident quietly. It had lasted only a few hours. The breakdown, the tow, the coffee, the brief conversation. Yet those hours had reshaped her internal landscape. They had reminded her that life was full of small awakenings, that attention and care mattered. That awareness could create ripples far larger than the immediate moment. Daniel had not changed her life with grand gestures. He had changed it by reminding her of what was missing, and, more importantly, what she deserved. He had allowed her to feel seen, respected, and valued. That was enough. And it was more than she had realized she needed. Alina knew that life would continue, that challenges and routines would persist. But she also knew she would not go back to the way she had been before. Something inside her had shifted permanently. She had learned the value of recognition, the power of awareness, the importance of acknowledging her own worth. She had been awakened, and awakenings once felt cannot be undone. On quiet evenings, she sometimes pictured the workshop, the faint smell of oil, the soft light, and Daniel's calm presence. She smiled, not with longing or regret, but with gratitude.